Great to see everybody. Appreciate all your prayers and your messages through the weekend. We're glad to be back home as of 11:20 last night. We're settled back in. So, no, it's wonderful to see everybody. As you open up to Daniel today, please do so to the 11th chapter. We're almost to the end. I would love to cover, and we have been, pretty much one chapter per class period. This one's 45. Came on, off. Let me go switch out batteries. You can, yeah. It was on all along, right, buddy? Yeah, it was. Okay. I might ought to switch out batteries, or do you care just to grab a couple in case it dies? Okay. Anyway, so we're in Daniel 11. Nevertheless, I want to say this going into our study of the 11th chapter of this incredible prophetic work, that, and you've heard this many times, it's so true that the Bible. Thank you, Marty. The Bible wasn't written to be a history book. But man, is it full of history. And really that's true of any discipline that you would study in school. It's not written to be a science manual, but wow, is it full of science. It's not written to be a mathematics book. We've had a whole year studying all the math that's found in the Bible. But it's not really a discipline that you would study in school as a book, a textbook, not intended to be that. Well, the same is true of history. The Bible is not written to be a history book per se, but wow, is it full of history. Now, we've seen a lot of this in our study and all the stories and the symbols that are contained in the book of Daniel, but especially we're going to notice that to be true today in Daniel's vision of the kings, and of the kings, I would say, of many kings. So, Old Testament writing ceases about what year? Who could share that with us? Old Testament writing is cut off about what point BC, before Christ? Malachi is a good one to have at the end. It's thought to be the last book chronologically that's written. Of course, not all the Bible is chronological, but Malachi is written, you'll see as a date a lot of times, 432 BC. Others will say it's a little more exactly 430 BC. Okay, give or take 2 years. 430 BC. Now, the New Testament, as far as events go, pick up about what year? And we would love to say 0. It's not the way it happens. God didn't split time. He'd have split it perfectly if he did so. People split time, and it seems that maybe we split it just a little bit off. The gospel accounts pick up about when? Okay, BC? No, AD you're saying. Okay, well, yes, good. So Jesus' death is going to be about AD 30, but then we have all of his life, including his birth, so... Oh, you're talking about writing. I'm sorry. My bad. That makes more sense. Very good. About 3, 4 BC. I believe it's 4 BC myself. Some say as early as maybe about 6 BC. Is that what you're going to... Yeah. Very good. So there's roughly 400 years of silence. And I don't know if you've done this in a while, but not Matthew, but Malachi is only made up of 4 chapters. And look toward the end of it, there's actually predicted a time of divine silence. And then at Malachi's work and his writing, it's actually foretold. Look at chapters 3 and 4, the final 2 of the Old Testament. And so, yeah, there's about 400 years of silence, which is crazy because... really, in the Bible, we have something all the way from the beginning, and then you pick up with the birth of Jesus once Malachi stops his prophetic work and carries through, some think as late as AD 100. I think it's AD 70, personally, myself. And then there's the cutoff and there's the silence, but it's strange that you have this 400-year period that you just know nothing about biblically. Kind of. So we don't have it as far as a narrative goes, but we do have it in predictive prophecy, and it's right here in Daniel chapter 11. And we're going to start with immediately what's taking place, what will take place right after these events that we've covered so far leading up to chapter 11 in Daniel. Verse 1, also in the first year of Darius the Mede, which that sounds like we're rewinding. And we've tried not to do that in this study. We wanted to keep things chronologically flowing. Do you remember where we were whenever we left off last week from chapter 10? And if you'll recall, Darius the Mede and Cyrus the Persian, it seems like their datings occur at the same time, and they're co-rulers, not of the same territory. But Cyrus the Great, he's over the greater and Persian element, whereas Darius the Mede is over the Old Babylonian section, has just been taken over by the Medo-Persians. Look back in verse 1 of chapter 10. We just studied about in the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. The message was true, but the appointed time was long, and he understood the message. That doesn't always happen in these. And he had understanding of the vision. So in the 3rd year of Cyrus, which seemed to also be in the 3rd year of Darius. So as we go back to chapter 11 where we are today in the first verse, also in the 1st year of Darius the Mede, and so it sounds like we've gone backward 3 years. That's not the case. This is actually a continuation of what we've been studying in chapter 10, and he's recalling historical event. You know, how many times do we say, back in, I'm about to date myself, 19, I started to say, okay, let's progress a little from there. Back in 2013, we do that a lot, and that's what's going on right here. So we're in the year still, 536 BC. 536 BC. We know that because Cyrus the Great steps onto the scene, as well as Darius the Mede, in 539 BC. But what we've been discussing in chapter 10, let's remind ourselves really quickly. So the previous chapter, what's been going on with Daniel and this vision that he has. We called this the man vision. But it's not just a vision of any ordinary man. Verse 4 of chapter 10. The prophet says, "Now on the 24th day of the 1st month, as I was by the side of the great river," that is the Tigris, "I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen," or beautiful, clean, white garments, "whose waist was girded with gold. His body was like beryl," or probably in emeralds, it's in that family anyway. "His face like the appearance of lightning, very bright. His eyes like torches of fire. His arms and feet like polished bronze in color. And the sound of his words were like the sound of a multitude." We only find this kind of description in the Bible where else? Revelation chapter 1, and we're very clearly told there, who is the man who's beheld? Revelation 1, it is Jesus, the Son of God, one like the Son of Man. Verse 7 of chapter 10, Daniel says, "I alone saw the vision, and when he did, my vigor was turned to frailty. I retained no strength. Yet I heard the sound of his words, and while I heard the sound of his words, I was in a deep sleep on my face, with my face to the ground." In other words, he's passed out, it seems. He's fainted. In verse 10, suddenly a hand touches him, and he starts to tremble or gain some consciousness once again, and he's given strength to stand up and to understand the vision as well as the meaning. So you compare that to Revelation chapter 1, and the same likenesses that are beheld by Daniel are beheld by John. He falls at his feet as dead, John says. I believe what he's saying by that is he loses consciousness until the man reaches out and touches him, gives him strength to help revive him so that he can understand the vision itself as well as all of its meanings. Now, I've stated this a number of times, and I continue to do so. The book of Daniel is the book of Revelation concealed. The book of Revelation is the book of Daniel revealed. I don't believe personally there's any difference as far as the substance of what goes on here from Daniel 10 to Revelation 1. If it's not Jesus in Daniel 10, it's strange that every detail fits it perfectly, I would say. But this much we do know, he's called a man. Now, we're not told the name of this individual, even though he's called a man. But earlier, there's a name given for an angel that shows up, and what's his name in Daniel? Okay, there are two names, and one earlier is Gabriel. What does Gabriel mean? Very good. Man, or the man of God. This one's not given a name, but he is a man, and a man sent from God. Who do you think this is? I think Gabriel is a fascinating possibility as far as a name goes. And yeah, he was. But he does say in Revelation 1, it's the revelation or the message of Jesus Christ. All this is about giving a message in Revelation 1. Good. Yeah, you're right, Roy. Okay, so I just want to remind of that, though. At the end of chapter 10, I do want to make reference to this. Then he said, "Do you know why I have come to you?" Verse 20. "And now I must return to fight with the prince of Persia." And we pointed out how that doesn't seem to be a reference to the ruler himself of Persia, but to some kind of spiritual power that's working behind. And he goes on to say, "When I have gone forth, indeed the prince of Greece will come." Again, I don't know that that's the ruler itself as much as an evil influence that's working within government. And I know that's hard to wrap our minds around, that there could ever be any evil influence in a government of our world. But strangely, it's not funny, Dad. Strangely, for some reason, way back when there were evil influences at work within government. Satan loved to do evil things within the highest powers. I'm going to guess that he might still like that kind of strategy today. It goes on to say, "I will tell you, though, what is noted in the scripture of truth. No one upholds me against these except Michael, your prince." We're going to have more discussion on Michael when the time's right in the 12th chapter. So verse 1 of our text today, 11. "Also in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I, stood up to confirm and to strengthen him." All right, so there's this messenger who's sent forth from God, whether he's created or not created, we're not told right here. We are told that he's a man that in description Revelation 1 looks exactly like Jesus in every way, as well as all the interactions with humanity. But there's this influence for good sent from heaven to stand up and to strengthen, who seems, from what we studied about Daniel in the lion's den, a really good guy in Daniel the Mede. Verse 2, "And now," he says, "I will tell you the truth," this heavenly messenger. "Behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than them all. By his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all the realm of Greece." What we're going to do from this point is to skip forward a little bit historically. So the guy who's in charge of all of Persia right now, what's his name? Cyrus. Very good. And is he a nothing, or is Cyrus the little? Or the great. I'm sorry. Okay, I got mistaken with somebody else. So Cyrus the Great is his name. The scriptures say there will be 3 more Persian kings who shall arise. I'm going to give these to you in case you're interested. Cambyses, and that's from 530 to 522 BC. Smerdis, who will reign only 1 year, 522 BC. Darius, not the Mede. This is a later one. But Darius the Great, 521 to 486 BC. So that covers the 3 more kings will arise in Persia. But then it goes on to say, and there will be a 4th. The 4th shall be far richer than them all. By his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up against all the realm of the next superpower on the scene, Greece. And this refers to a guy of whom you might have heard before, Xerxes. His other name we know in the Bible better as Ahasuerus. Now that has a real connection to the people of God. So Xerxes, or Ahasuerus, whom we know better in the Bible, reigns from 486 to 465 BC, 21, or depending how you count it, 22 years. And this reference here is a failed attempt at revenge. It mentions he's going to stir up all the realm stir up all against the realm of Greece, try to go all out to defeat them, where there's a failed attempt at revenge by the Persians from the Battle of Marathon that occurred in 490 BC. And they try to muster all they can against the Greeks in a real final attempt in the Battle of Salamis, which will occur in 480 BC. But God has plans, not for the Persians to stay in power, but for then the Grecians to become the superpower of the world. All right, moving on to our memory verse, number 3. Who would like to say this one? Daniel 11:3. Amanda, please. Thank you. Excellent. Word for word. So there's going to be this mighty king after these 4 Persian kings, and they've been trying to hang on, and they bring in essentially the whole world or of that area to fight against Greece to try to get this to stop, and it doesn't work. And then we're told, so a mighty king is going to arise, and he's going to rule with great dominion and do whatever he wants. Who do you think this guy's going to be? I believe so. You could... Yes, he did. I lean... Right. I lean towards so, but I'm like you. I wouldn't become too dogmatic on it. Sometimes there's some... And again, we could go back to the discussion of whether Darius and Cyrus are the same person. I don't think so, but I know some do believe that to be the case. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, thank you, Roy. Fascinating history of the Persians, the Grecians. Lots of good stuff for sure. Babylonians, that's one of my favorites of all. You know, you hear a lot of the Egyptians. That's a good one back when, but I really, really like the Babylonians. Some fascinating stuff there. Okay, so Alexander the Great, he's going to rule from 336 to 323 BC. He's going to die, of course, in the prime of his life. Verse 4, and when he has arisen, or done what he's going to do, that is Alexander the Great, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided. This isn't the first time we've heard this in Daniel. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, maybe the third by this point. But Alexander the Great, his kingdom shall be broken up. And I hope we can appreciate all of this specific prophecy that's occurring, because let's not forget where we are in history, 536 to be exact, BC. And I just mentioned, when's Alexander going to reign? Well, he'll start in 336. So this is 200 years before he's ever going to step even onto the throne. All these specific prophecies are being given about well after his life. We're getting into right now, it's at his life. But when he's arisen, does what he's going to do. Verse 4, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. So there'll be 4 directions of this kingdom. I'm going to show you a map of this right now. We're told that this kingdom will not be divided, however, among his posterity or his children, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be uprooted even for others besides these. Typically, when a king rules, who takes over? His sons. Yeah. But we're told his sons are not going to take over. And sure enough, he died at a very young age. And you look at ancient history, and here you can find on the divisions of the map, there are 4 Hellenistic empires that grow out of the one. Hellenistic just means Grecian influence. Go ahead. That's exactly right. They're not his sons, not a single one of them. They're his war generals. And how fitting, because these are like sons, I'm sure, to Alexander. Some of them anyway. And whenever you break it up, you have Cassander, who ruled over Macedonia, or as you'll see on this map, Macedon. That's on the Aegean Peninsula, of course, where Greece is found today. There's also a North Macedon as a country, still named that. So if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Lysimachus, who takes over Thrace, which is just to the east, and that's going to be the orange-colored on the map, as well as Asia Minor, of course, that peninsula that juts out, that's Turkey today. Seleucus, and these are going to be the two of most importance to us. Seleucus, who takes over Syria, he's also known as the king of the north in this prophecy. So where he's listed there is where Syria's, somewhat where Syria is found. It's going to be actually a little bit to the southwest. You can see Damascus on the map. And then also over Babylonia, which is the the territory of the old Babylonian Empire. And then lastly, the fourth of these is a guy named Ptolemy, and he's going to help form the Ptolemaic Empire, which is essentially Egypt, over which he's going to reign. So this is the territory, roughly, of the Grecian Empire. But at the death of Alexander, it's broken up into 4 sections, and it's ruled over by 4 different people, none of whom are the offspring of the great one, Alexander the Great, as was prophesied more than 200 years prior. It's going to be ruled by people other than his children, which, as Roy stated, will be his war generals. So in verse 5, also, the king of the south, all right, so who's that? Let's go. There we go. It's going to be Ptolemy Soter, or the Greeks might say Soter. That's an interesting name. You know what Soter means, or Soter? What does Soter or Soter mean? I'm not necessarily asking you. I'm just, does anybody know that? I'm not putting Roy on the spot. I'm just asking generally. Anybody know what that means? It means Savior. It's the same word that's going to be used of Jesus, obviously, later on, or deliverer. Think this guy thought a little bit about himself? Names himself the Savior, or maybe others do. He's going to rule over his kingdom from 322 to 305 BC. We're told also the king of the south shall become strong, as well as one of his princes, and that's Seleucus, who he's going to kind of help. They'll form a little bit of an alliance, and he'll come up underneath him, and he's going to have this ginormous Seleucid empire. But then we're told he shall gain power over him, that is, the king of the north, eventually over the king of the south, not right away, but eventually so, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion, this Seleucid empire. Verse 6, and at the end of some years, they shall join forces, or an alliance is going to come between them, even though they've maybe been on the outs for a while. For the daughter of the king of the south shall go to the king of the north to make an agreement. What's it sound like's going on here? If you have two nations that are at odds with one another in yesteryears, and cute little gal goes up to the north, and what's going on here? There you go. Yeah. You're right. You're exactly right. And so these two come together through a marriage alliance. Nothing brings two people who are apart together closer and happier than what a marriage does. So they try to get together with this marriage alliance. But, we're told, she shall not retain the power of her authority, and neither he nor his authority shall stand, but she shall be given up with those who brought her, and with him who begot her, and with him who strengthened her in those times. In other words, it's not going to work, maybe, just exactly the way it was drawn up on paper. This is a reference, by the way, the king of the south, Ptolemy Philadelphus, kind of like Philadelphia in the Bible, and Philadelphia, of course, today in America. And also Antiochus II Theos was his name. The king of the north, Antiochus II Theos. Does that sound familiar at all, Theos? What's that? It's the same as Elohim in the Old Testament. God. You think this guy thought a little bit of himself? So you have one who names himself the Savior of the people, and the other who names himself God. God over the people. Listen, these deranged syndromes of mind go way back. Verse number 7, but from a branch of her roots, one shall arise in his place, who shall come with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north and deal with them and prevail. This is going to be Ptolemy III, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Euergetes, who will reign from 246 to 222. And as far as the king of the north at that time, over whom he'll have some success, Seleucus II, Callinicus, who will reign from the same year, but only to 226 BC, and which fits, because listen to this in verse 8. And he also shall carry their gods, the king of the south, captive to Egypt, with their princes and their precious articles of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. We'll go back to the historical reference here. So the king of the south reigns from 246 to 222. And I know it's hard if you're like I am without seeing it, but can you vision that somewhat? 246 on top, and we have 222 underneath that. So that gives us a difference of what? How many years were reigned by the king of the south? 24? Very good. Or if you're going to count the first one, 25. Okay. And then the king of the north, Seleucus II, reigns from the same year starting, 246, but only to 226 BC. So 246, 226, a difference of what? 20. So the king of the south reigns for 24, 25 years. The one in the north reigns for 20, count the first year, 21 years. And notice what the prophecy is. And he shall continue more years than the king of the north. 4, to be exact. So kind of neat, math-wise and historically. Verse number 9, also the king of the north shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. Probably because he's wanting to fight and get some revenge after being whooped, but it doesn't work the way that he wants. Verse 10, however, his sons shall stir up strife and assemble a multitude of great forces. And one shall certainly come and overwhelm and pass through. Then he shall return to his fortress and stir up strife. This seems to be a reference to Seleucus III, Cyrannus, and Antiochus III in the north. In 223 to 187 BC, he reigns. Verse number 11, and the king of the south, or of Egypt, shall be moved with rage, and go out and fight with him, with the king of the north, who shall muster a great multitude. But the multitude shall be given into the hand of his. And this is a reference to the defeat that takes place in the battle of Raphia by, or at the hands of, Ptolemy IV Philopator, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who reigned from 222 to 205 BC. Verse 12. When he has taken away the multitude, his heart will be lifted up, and he will cast down tens of thousands, but he will not prevail. For the king of the north will return and muster a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come at the end of some years with a great army and much equipment. Now in those times many shall rise up against the king of the south. Also, violent men of your people shall exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they shall fall. Verse 15, so the king of the north shall come and build a siege mound and take a fortified city, and the forces of the south shall not withstand him. Even his choice troops shall have no strength to resist. And historically, this is a battle that takes place 13 years after that initial one, and the roles are going to get reversed. This occurs in the Battle of Sidon, where a guy named Scopas, who was a chief lieutenant of Ptolemy, is going to be defeated by Antiochus. And I know that's a lot of detail as you go through. Hopefully it's not overly boring. But I hope we do gain an appreciation, too. Remember, we're talking about events 300 years into the future. And it's like, okay, there's going to be this ruler after these 4, and the 4th one's going to be like this, and then this ruler's going to do this, and then this ruler's going to be this way and engage in this battle, and the battle's going to turn out in the favor of the guy in the south and then the one in the north, and then they're going to come together to fight, and the battle's not going to come to fruition as he thinks. I mean, it's insane, the details of this. So, again, I know it's not necessarily the most, intriguing as far as just grabbing your attention, sucking you in, but I hope we don't lose sight of the bigger picture that God knows everything, and what kind of entity could lay out all of these individual personalities, who they are, what they're going to do, very specific details about their lives. This battle effort's going to fail, and yet it still all happens. I don't know if people stopped reading their Bibles or probably so would be my guess, but isn't it nothing short of remarkable? All right, continuing on, verse 16 of Daniel 11. But he who comes against him shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. So this is going to be, and remember the prophecy in the beginning, that you're going to have two sections here. The Ptolemaic Empire in Egypt, the Seleucid Empire off to the north and the east, and the Bible is called the King of the North. Very fitting, that's true. Certainly northern of the territory of God's people, but also extending on into the east. But we're told that eventually the one of the north is going to grow even greater than the one in the south, even though it was the guy in the south who helped the guy in the north. Well, we're finally getting to that point where it's the Seleucid Empire that really takes over. He who comes against him from the north comes against the one in the south shall do according to his own will, and no one shall stand against him. He shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his power. What do you think the glorious land would be? Oh, yeah. And especially, but not limited to, the capital city, even of Jerusalem, promised land, the glory land. But he's going to do so with destruction in his power. What's that going to be like for the people of God as far as the Jews go? Not a fun time in the least. More punishment is going to be coming upon them. I'm sorry. Yes, they will be caught in the middle of all this fighting. Verse 17, he shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do. And he shall give him the daughter of women for the purpose of to destroy it. But she shall not stand with him. In other words, daughter is going to turn her back on daddy who gave her away, or before him. This is a reference to Antiochus, who gives his daughter to be married to somebody in the south. Maybe you've heard of her before. Cleopatra? The Queen of the Nile, right? I'm sorry? Right. So Antiochus gives his daughter Cleopatra to be married to Ptolemy, who at the time was a 7-year-old boy. Start early back then, don't they? All right, but we're told in the prophecy, the whole purpose of, essentially she's sent in as one to infiltrate and just to help daddy, just to take over. But she's not going to be as big of a help for daddy, is what he envisioned. After this, he shall turn his face to the coastlands and shall take many. But a ruler shall bring the reproach against them to an end, and with the reproach removed, he shall turn back on him. This is talking about when Antiochus is defeated in Greece by what other superpower is coming after Greece? By the Romans. Yeah, and Antiochus, the ruler of this Seleucid Empire, had his son, Antiochus Epiphanes, ever heard of him? Taken away from him and carried to Rome, where he would be kept hostage for 12 years. He's going to be groomed to become something great. Not great, but like the terrible kind of great. Verse 19, then he shall turn his face toward the fortress of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Antiochus the Great is killed in 187 BC by fierce tribesmen in a place called Elamaeus. Then we read in verse number 20, there shall arise in his place one who imposes taxes on the glorious kingdom. I know these are all novel concepts to us, evil in government and people who want more taxes who are in power, but apparently, we don't know what this means now. We're just too innocent. Yep. All right, so there arises one in his place, one who opposes taxes, but on the glorious kingdom. Which one do you think that's going to be? I think that's okay. No, you're right. Third time. No, yeah, I did hear it. No, I did hear it though. Yeah, I would say it's probably going to refer to, kind of like we were just a little bit ago, and the glorious land, the glorious kingdom is probably a reference to Israel, it would seem. But within a few days, now this could be, literally or figuratively speaking, he shall be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. So this is Seleucus the Fourth Philopater, or I'm sorry, not Philopater, but I've lost it for just a second. Philopater. There we go. It's like, no, it's not right. Flippy, flappy, Sammy. Okay. So he reigns from 187 to 175 BC. I don't think it's saying that the number of days that he reigns total is few, because he reigns 12, or perhaps counting the first 13 years. But it does seem to be saying perhaps that once he begins his oppression of God's people, he doesn't last very long, just a few days over that. It's widely believed that he was probably poisoned as far as his death goes historically, and that would match up with biblical prophecy. He would be destroyed, but not in anger or in battle. Kind of a little more secretive behind the scenes, perhaps, work going on. Verse 21, and in his place shall arise a vile person. And here's where we're going to change directions just a little bit. I know we're not going to cover all of this today, but what I've labeled a contemptible person who's going to become the ruler of this Seleucid empire. In his place shall arise a contemptible or a vile person, to whom they will not give the honor of royalty, but he shall come in peaceably, in a different way than these other kings, with force and heavy taxation, and he'll seize the kingdom by intrigue. In other words, it's not through force that he comes in, but he comes in like a populist, and the people love him. And it's like, oh, this guy, now he has the right mindset. We can trust him. And this is going to be the gentleman, I'm sure Roy could tell us, whose name is, a.k.a. Antiochus Epiphanes. He's going to be quite the character. And I'll just say this, he's not as advertised in the beginning. Justin, we don't understand this. Because every politician we've ever had in America, what you see is what you get. Yeah, and what he or she says on the campaign trail is exactly the way the term in office goes. Every time. These poor people, they don't know how good politics work, do they? All right, so this guy comes on, he comes in peaceably, he seizes the kingdom by intrigue. Man, we like this guy. He's not necessarily was going to be the ruler, but he should be the ruler. This is the one we need to have in place. Verse 22, with the force of a flood, they shall be swept away from before him and be broken. Wait a minute, I thought he's a good guy. He's just wanting to help people. And also, who will be taken away and broken is the prince of the covenant. Of course, we know what happens with Jesus later. I don't think this is probably a reference to Jesus. I think this is back in their time. And there's a guy by the name of Onias III who's serving as high priest, and he ends up kind of being what you might term the final of the righteous group of the high priest. And it seems like Antiochus Epiphanes wants this guy out of the way because he's too concerned about what God says, and he wants to do things by the book. And he has a new way that he's going to want to do things, and especially worship. Keep that in mind for next week. Verse 23, and after the league or the alliance is made with him, he shall act deceitfully. He's going to turn. For he shall come up and become strong with a small number of people. And I'll go back and reference that old place, Syria, the oldest capital city in the world of Damascus. He's going to get some power players in the Syrian government who are going to back him to help to work and to accomplish his agenda. Verse 24, he shall enter peaceably, even into the richest places of the province, and he shall do what his fathers have not done, nor his forefathers. From the success in battle, he shall disperse among them the plunder, spoil, riches, and he shall devise his plans against the strongholds, the enemies, but only for a time. So how does he gain the favor of the people? He walks in and he says, hey, look, you have been oppressed for too long. You've had funds withheld from you. But if I could just rule over you, then I will give you, he makes all these monetary promises to him. Well, this guy's going to give us free A, B, C, D, and we got to get him over us. We've never seen these kinds of things before, right, in our country. But back then, for some reason, that's the way government operated. Monetary promises to the people. And kind of starts down that direction when he begins. Verse 25, he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south, the Egyptian kingdom, shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for they shall devise plans against him. And sure enough, Antiochus Epiphanes moved against Egypt in 170 BC. Verse 26, yes, and those who eat the portion of his delicacies shall destroy him. This is the king of the south. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain. Ptolemy's advisors treacherously advised the boy king to flee Alexandria by sea, where he was naturally intercepted by the northern king, the ruler Antiochus. Verse 27, both these kings' hearts shall be bent on evil, king of the north, king of the south, and they shall speak lies at the same table. These governmental officials get together to talk business about their people and their kingdoms and their agendas. They're just like snakes with their forked tongues coming out. You know, usually when you're talking about evil in government, it's only in one place, right? There's not evil all over the world going on in governments. Has anything changed in more than 2,000 years? But it shall not prosper, their lies and their plans. For the end will still be at the appointed time. You know, it's sad that these liars couldn't even trust one another as they talked. It's said that Antiochus pretended to back Philometor against his brother who had been proclaimed king. And the brother that had been proclaimed king in the south was Euergetes II. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I'm on your side, not your brother's. But in reality, it's, it's strange. Back then, when governmental officials spoke, it's like if you would just believe the opposite of what they would say, you'd be right. What a bad time to live in a bad government, huh? To have. Oh, you might sense the sarcasm, right? Okay, verse 28. While returning to his land with great riches, his heart shall be moved against the holy covenant, so he shall do damage and return to his own land. Historically, en route to his homeland, Antiochus Epiphanes marched with a strong force against Jerusalem. There he entered the temple and he carried off the sacred furniture. He stripped off all the gold plating from the front of the temple. He seized the gold, the silver, the precious vessels, and whatever secret treasures he found. Does this sound familiar in the study of Daniel at all? He goes in and he sacks the temple, and of course the holy city and the holy land itself. Goes into the temple and he strips it of all of the precious metals that are found on the inside. Who else has tried this? So Nebuchadnezzar, the grandfather, or predecessor anyway, takes it all, but you're exactly right, Roy. And in the height of his insult that he's firing against God's people and the God of Israel, he sends for the vessels of the temple so that he and his concubines and all the officials can drink wine out of these in rebellion against the God of Israel. What happens that very night? Yeah, and prior to that, there's a hand that shows up. Whoa, they're saying, they don't know if they're drunk or what, I'm sure. They probably were. But they're of enough of a mind to recognize this isn't normal. And there's a message that's written on the wall, and more or less, it's, you're done. This is the last day you're going to spend on earth. So we have this terrible guy in Antiochus Epiphanes that has taken over in the Seleucid Empire, and he's exercising his dominion all over, flexing his muscles against the king of the south and Egypt. And he's also domineering over God's people, and I think he makes a grave mistake. The people might deserve it, but you don't insult the God of Israel and get away with it. So next week, we're going to be looking at the final verses leading up to verse 45. So we're going to be, about 17 verses, not a whole lot, but much more history that we need to cover. And I would encourage you, if you wouldn't mind, please read those. Also, let's memorize verse number 36. Verse 36, because his actions against the true God are just beginning. And I'm curious, aren't you? How is God going to act? Will he at all? Or will he just let this continue to transpire and his name be marred in the presence of his own people? We'll see next week. All right. So I know today it's a little less discussion. It's a whole lot of history. Again, I'll say I hope it wasn't boring to you. And that stuff, it takes a long time to sort through. But I hope the big picture we come away with being impressed by the knowledge of God and how he can just lay it all out for hundreds of years in the high reaches of government. This is everything important that's going to happen. And you can go through history and check off every one of those. One by one, it happens exactly the way that he says. What does that mean for us today? When he tells us the way things are going to unfold in this life, you can count on him. His word never fails. Just trust him, even in hard times. And for his people, everything's going to be fine when it's all said and done. Okay, any further comments, though, as we dismiss for a little break before worship? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.